Hello, class, and welcome to our lecture on cover letters. Today we're going to talk about this document, which is in some ways more important than your resume, in that it's the first thing that most people see. As the name suggests, cover letters are used to cover your job application and used to. They were originally part of the faxing protocol or the shipping things off through the mail. This would be the first thing that people would see before they saw your resume and any other documents that you might be sending. So we'll talk about this in a lot more detail. And as usual, if you have any questions, please let me know. So your cover letter, which you will write for this, will be aimed at a specific job advertisement. And so, but this is the way it goes with cover letters. Your resume, while you may want to adjust it depending on the position and maybe edit out some positions or include other past jobs that you didn't include in one resume, it might be tailored, in other words, for a specific job. A resume is a resume, and you usually don't mess with it too much when applying for different jobs, especially if they're very closely related. But your cover letter is going to be specifically aimed at each job that you apply for. Even if you just change one or two sentences, you're still going to want to make sure you change those sentences, because you want the hiring manager or whoever's looking at your application to think that you've written this specifically for them from scratch. So the idea here, and this is where attitude becomes very important. You really want to make sure that it's aimed at them. So as I've said in this slide, it's written for or adapted for a specific employer or a specific job. Even if you're applying for a couple of different positions and you know they're all going to the same employer, you're still going to want to tailor it for that specific job. It's written to someone in particular, a hiring manager, etc. In fact, if you and I'll get into this later, if you address this to whom it may concern or something like that, you might see in other business correspondence, it's the easiest way for you to get your application to be put in the discard pile, in the do not pay attention to pile. You want to make sure you're writing this for a specific person. This document will show that you know about the company itself and how you fit with that company, which is harder to do in the resume, and expresses enthusiasm about that position, that specific position. Okay, because it's the first thing that people see, you want it to present a good appearance for you. Okay, make sure that you have a good reputation about yourself. And because of that, it will have no errors. Okay, even the smallest typo will show that you did not put enough. You did not care enough about that job to correct that typo. Now, if it's a huge one, then that's definitely showing a bad thing. If it's a small one, then you want to make sure that you're putting forth that effort, because it's a good way to show that you are a details-oriented person. If that job it needs that, which most jobs do, or that you have that care and concern for this application, that you corrected this error. Okay, and because you're putting on a good appearance, you're going to close with an action statement, and we'll get into what that means. And then, as I've been hinting at, this works in tandem with your resume, so you want to make sure that you are speaking to the resume as you write this. Okay, because this is tailored so specifically, and so attitude is so important for a cover letter, that you are paying attention to what they need and what the company or the hiring manager is looking for. You will want to do some job research. You will want to do some research into the specific job that you're looking at, into the specific position that you're looking at. Okay, some good places to start are the company website. Okay, and this does not mean going just to coca-cola.com and looking at the cover page or the title page, or looking at just the jobs page. You want to dig deeper. Don't go crazy. Don't go into full Google stalker mode, but you want to dig deep and try to get a sense of what's going on with that company. All right. You might talk to other employees, all right, or other people involved in that field. If you're applying for a veterinary job, you might not know someone at the specific clinic, but if you know someone that's working in that field or in that specific area, like maybe not at that clinic, but in a clinic in the nearby area, that would work. Okay. This is very useful for basic ideas of how to sell yourself. This would be useful for what information to include. This would be useful for what kind of information you kind of want to aim towards. This job, you want to take a close look at the job advertisement. You might not think of it as research, but to critically engage and look at that advertisement will really help you see how to position yourself. Okay, what kind of qualifications you need to include in the cover letter as highlighting those things from your resume. That will be seen in the job advertisement. You also might look at Glassdoor.com. Okay, this is a website, and I referenced it in an earlier discussion, that takes in and people go to talk about what kind of company you're looking at, and you'll get a bad, like a negative portrayal for some people, especially if they've been fired. They might go there to rant, but you also get a sense of what's going on in that company. This, much like a company website, is really useful for big companies, but you can get a lot of information from a little more research into other things. You might also talk to the Stucker Career Center, UK's Career Center. It seems like they might not be much help when it comes to a specific job, but a lot of jobs that you might apply for, other former or other alumni have already applied for, and so they might have some thoughts on what's going on with that specific career, okay, or I'm sorry, that specific company, and what their likelihood is, or what their history is with UK employees, or UK graduates. I'm sorry, UK graduates. All right. When you're looking at this stuff, it's useful to look for this sort of information. What kind of corporate climate is it? Is this a place like Enterprise, which hires a lot of graduates, but their corporate climate is there's a high turnover rate because it's a high commission payment, and a lot of people use it as a stepping stone to something further. Well, if that's the way that company is, doesn't mean you don't want to get a job there. It might mean that you want to tailor your cover letter so that it reflects that kind of corporate climate of instant results. Okay, so you might show how you might highlight in your qualifications or highlight from your resume things where you've gotten results really quickly, or things where you get good results quickly, okay, even or in a rapid time. But if the corporate climate is one of more of a community, and you get that from Glassdoor or from the company website, then you might want to highlight how you work well with others. Okay. So if it's a sales generated, you might show that in your resume. If it's sales climate, if it's a invested long-term client relationship type thing, then you might talk about cooperative work. All right. You might look at the company's outlook, how they're doing. You don't want to seem like a huge corporate climber if the company's outlook is more of a slow-paced type of thing for individuals in that company. But also, if the company is not really skyrocketing, like if the corporate outlook is not great, you might not apply there. But also, if you do decide to apply there, you might not highlight that you are very ambitious, because that's going to not mesh well with the way that the HR people are looking for people that are willing to weather a bad quarter or whatever. You might look at the history, and as a way to give that outlook context. Are they rising quickly as a job, or are they steadily improving or steadily declining? You might look at that as a way to talk about yourself. And some of this is useful research as to whether you want to apply to a place, but it's also useful to know this sort of stuff so you know how to position yourself in relation to other candidates as someone that's willing to stick it out if things are not great right now, like if it's a real estate job, or you are willing to work hard because it is a good time to strike where the iron's hot, if you will. You might look at the company's clients. Who are they working with? Okay, what other companies are they working with? Do you have a relationship with that? Have you worked for that company, even at a small level? And then also, and this is especially important for the interview, but it's useful to know for the cover letter as well, What is the position you're looking at? What is their place in the corporate hierarchy? Who would you report to? Okay, what kind of who would you work with? That sort of thing. Okay, and then there are obviously other things that you can bring in to help you write a more effective cover letter. So the cover letter's format is pretty simple. If you've written a business letter, which most high school writing assignments will eventually do this at some point, you've seen this. It's a one page assignment or document where you have specific things that you definitely need to include. For instance, you need your return address at the top, okay, and we'll talk about different ways to do that. You need the date, you need the recipient's address, okay, because even if you're sending this through email, you want to show that you put the effort forward to know where their corporate address is or where the branch address is, so that so that you have put forth that effort. It's a small thing, and it doesn't take much time to do, but you want to make sure and look into that. The salutation, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then, of course, your closing and your enclosure. And one thing that shows, and you might want to look into doing this, is to get a scanned copy of your signature. And this is useful because, again, it's that little bit of personal touch on a cover letter that's going to set you apart from someone that just signed it by typing their name. If you put an image of your signature at the bottom, then it shows a little bit more polish and professional appeal than just putting a digital signature, which, as we all know, is just a written name. Okay, and then this enclosure thing is what's enclosed. And with a cover letter, you're always enclosing your resume. You might enclose other things, but more often than not, you're just enclosing your resume. So you want to put that down there so they know what to look for as part of this packet. Okay. As usual, if you have any questions, let me know. Now, when you're doing this, you might, and I've talked about adapting, you might have a cover letter that you just kind of adapt for the specific jobs. If you do so, make sure you highlight these things, because if you don't change this, then it will be something that's weird and probably get your application thrown out. If the date isn't changed, if the recipient's address isn't changed, and the salutation, who are you writing this to? If you forget to change the name, then it's going to look really weird and they're not going to know what to do with it. So you want to make sure you do that to change all these things, as well as a lot of the personal information in the letter itself. Okay. So also with the cover letter, you have your introduction, you have your conclusion, you have your body paragraphs. This is the same thing we see with a lot of emails, and we talked about that as far as a memo form, but it's also, if you're sending it off electronically, you can also write this as a business letter format. Although if you're writing strictly an email and not just including this in a digital application, then a lot of times you don't include this sort of stuff. Okay. Also, and this is just while I'm talking about email, your return address, you usually include the permanent address that you're sending stuff to, the same one you included in your resume. But you can also include in this return address your email address and cellular phone number if you choose. Excuse me. And you might do this as a way to give someone a quicker way to get in touch with you. The return address is just basically a way for the employer to, get a hold of you. All right. So when you look at the letter format, you have two basic ways to include this return address. And this is the standard one that we already talked about, the traditional one, which is just starts with your street address. Do not list your name because that's coming later. Okay, your name will come down here. But you include your street address up here. That's pretty standard. It's what most business letters start with. But if you want to take the time, and I highly recommend that you do, if not for this assignment, then for your own job applications in the future, put together a letterhead. And this letterhead is your own personal letterhead. And it goes at the top, and it will usually be put in the header of a document. So you're taking advantage of that space in your document itself. You want to use the largest size, just like for the resume. For your name, you want to list all contact information. In fact, you can usually, if you design it right, take this from your resume and put it on your cover letter. Okay, now what you might want to mess with it a little bit, because it can take up a lot of space depending on what you do, and you might want to leave that space for the information that you're including in the body paragraph and the introduction and the concluding paragraph. But this header is a very useful way and a good way to put your own personal stamp on something. The reason that you put this at the top of a business letter is so that they know how to find you. Same reason you put that personal information at the top of a resume. So you can use the same type of information and kind of put that sort of thing on it. When you're doing this, and this goes for all your business documents, and I didn't talk about this with the resume, you might want to pay special attention to the way that you're using fonts. Okay? It makes a difference. A small difference, but a difference what kind of font you choose. So if I'm writing everything in Comic Sans, if you know anything about Comic Sans, you know that it's a ridiculous font choice because it's a very childish looking thing. Well, that's not going to help me get a job at a professional place like, you know, Coca-Cola or a business environment, but it might help me get a job at a school, an elementary school, not a college, but an elementary school. Why? Because that font reflects a certain amount of values or a certain kind of way of looking at things that an employer is going to use to kind of make a judgment about you. So if I use a Comic Sans font in my header, then that's going to show this childish kind of approach that works well, again, for an elementary position, but not well for a position as an accountant. Okay, there I might use a more formal, more professional, I guess, I got no other word for it, font like Times New Roman that's going to have that kind of objective kind of look at it. But you can play with this. For instance, in my own documents right now, I tend to use Georgia as a font choice. Why? Because it's a little less formal than Times New Roman. It's a little more playful in the way that the angles of the font work, but it's still got that serifed way of looking at things. And if you have any questions about font choice, please let me know. I will look at your cover letter draft and let you know what you have, what I think about your font choice. But you might play with that, okay? I can go on and on about this sort of design decision, but that, especially in the header, letterhead, can really make a difference in setting you up for a good opinion being formed about you, okay, or hurt you. So whichever one you choose, the traditional or the letterhead, you're gonna want to follow your own personal address with that of the potential employer. And if you choose to create a letterhead, you want to use the same one on all of your documents because that's a way to tie them all together for your for the potential employee. That goes for the interview thank you letter, that goes for the reference list, that goes for all of them. Okay. So after you've included your address, your return address or letterhead, and you've included the postal address for the job and your salutation, and then you get into the introduction. And when you do that, you want to write to someone in particular. I've already said that. And if you don't know, you might write to like if it's not listed in the job advertisement, look it up. And that just means going to the company's website and finding who's hiring, who's the hiring manager, or who's the head of HR. And at least then you've got a target. And it might not be the head of HR that's running this specific job search, or it's not then you might look at where is the position, and you might look at the manager for that position. So if you are right, if the job is for, let's say, the education coordinator for a nonprofit, then I'm going to go look at who's in charge of education for that nonprofit. All right. And when you're looking that up, you're going to find out a lot about that position that is useful for the cover letter, but it's also going to help you direct this at a specific person. Okay. So if the job advertisement doesn't list it, look it up. Okay. The other thing to know about this salutation, okay, is that when we're talking in a professional setting, you can still use dear, all right, but you do not want to use a comma. And it's a stupid grammatical thing, but it makes a difference. A comma is a very, very informal and familiar way of using a salutation. If you don't know someone at all, then you would usually use a colon. If you kind of know someone, you use a semicolon. It's a stupid kind of hierarchy, but that's the way we do it when we do a business letter. So since you're not going to know the hiring manager at all, you want to keep it professional and use a formal form of address, okay, Mr., Mrs., or Doctor if that's the case, and a colon, okay? And then you start with block formatting, and I didn't talk about this before. When you're writing a academic essay, you're usually told to indent. When you're writing a professional letter, you want to use block formatting. And by that I mean you don't indent and you leave a space in between the documents, okay, in between each paragraph, okay? And this is the default usually for Windows, or for Microsoft Word, but you want to make sure that you're following this format. It drives me nuts when I'm writing stuff for you guys or for my own stuff because I always have to put that indent in. It doesn't drive me nuts, but it's a little bit inconvenient. But this is why, because Microsoft Word's default is for professional environments. In the professional environment, you're usually going to use block formatting. Okay. All right. If you have any questions about this, again, please let me know. When you're writing your introductory paragraph, you put your salutation in there, and then the introductory paragraph is there for a couple of reasons. First, to remind the writer, or to let the writer, or the reader know why you're writing. Okay, so for instance, why are you writing? You're writing this cover letter because you want a job, or you want an interview, really. But you're letting them know what position you're applying for. Okay, so you state the position that you're applying for in that introductory paragraph. Let them know right up front. Okay, just like with an email, you want to let them know real quick why you're writing. Okay. You want to list what skills and qualifications you have that make you right for this position. Okay, so this again, you're applying for this position. This is why you fit. This is why you're a good choice. Okay, because you want to let them know within the first paragraph why they should keep reading. Okay, why should this person, the hiring manager, or whoever you're addressing this to, keep reading this letter? Okay, if you're not qualified for the job, then they're going to stop reading. Okay, so you want to let them know real quick why you're qualified for it. All right. And then you want to state where you heard about the position, whether that was on Indeed or whether that was through someone that you know. Because if you know someone there, that's going to give you a leg up on the rest of your competition. And if you don't know someone there, don't worry about it. You still want to let them know where you found this information, because if they put it on Indeed recently, then you're showing initiative, and if they put it on Indeed a while ago, then you are showing that you are persistent. Okay, that you are applying for a job because you think it fits. All right, it sounds stupid, and it might not make that opinion with the HR person or whoever you're applying with, but it's not going to hurt. And this is the genre, and these are the conventions, and this is what they're looking for. And if you don't include that, then you're missing a step, and it might cause them to pause while they're reading this really quickly. Okay. So also in the introductory stuff, again, why should they keep reading? You want to let them know what you've enclosed, including your resume. So you let them know that the resume is included, okay, attached or enclosed with this correspondence is a copy of my resume. And you can see from the style of this introductory paragraph that it's very professional and very formal. Why? Because you don't know the person. And even if you do know the person, you don't know that they are the only one that's going to read this. Okay? So you want to make sure that you are staying professional and staying objective in the way that you write. All right? But this is what the introductory paragraph does. And this is the format, the conventions for this genre, so you want to kind of follow that. You get a little more leeway when it comes to the body paragraph, because the body paragraph, or paragraphs, if you have room, are going to do a couple of things. You're going to show that you know about the company, okay? And you're going to express your enthusiasm and interest for that job, being specific about why you're enthusiastic or interested. So if you look at this, okay, the goal to become a $15 billion company is a very respectful aspiration. So that's a very formal way of saying that it's a good goal. All right. This is something that the writer of this cover letter got from looking into the job, looking into the company. Okay, this is the goal, the mission statement of the company. Okay, They found that mission statement on the website, and so they're looking into that specific thing. All right. So if we look at this, we can see in this paragraph that the student or the applicant did research on the company's goals, and that they connected the skills, their own skills, okay, the skills that they can show in their resume or that they can show with specific things, okay, as you can see in this paragraph. They connected their skills to the company's needs. Remember, we're thinking about this in you attitude terms. So how does your resume show that you're fit for the job, or how has your experience, how could your experience be useful to the company, right? To the company, not for you getting the job, but for the company employing you, okay? It also, and this is talking about enthusiasm, lists skills related to the position, okay, interest, and use specific details to demonstrate that experience, okay? Now, this isn't perfect, and all cover letters usually can be revised, and if you are interested in a job, you want to go through multiple revisions, okay? So, things that could work or could be improved. The student's tone appears patronizing. Why? Because that first sentence, the goal is a respectful aspiration. It's a little bit patronizing. How could it be improved? Well, maybe you switch it around and you make it more about why they have that goal, okay, and how your how your qualifications make you a good fit for reaching that goal, not why your qualifications make that goal possible. Okay, if that makes sense. And that's just about tone, and that's something that you can work on when you're drafting a cover letter. Okay, it focuses too much on the company and not enough on the skills, because again, they know about their goals and mission statements. And with this idea of you attitude, you want to make sure that you are showing how you, the writer, can fit the audience or fit the hiring manager's needs, not how you can show that you know what you know, if that makes sense. And here the student could provide more concrete examples, because a lot of this stuff will be in your resume, okay? And what you want to do with your cover letter, and why the cover letter works with the resume, is you want to expand on what you show in the resume. And you expand on that with specific examples of how you did your job, or specific examples of what you did at your job, okay? Other things that the body paragraph is going to do is, again, show these things. So here's another example. And when we look at this, we can see, if you look a little bit closer, I'm just going on for a while, so I'm going to move quickly. You can show that the student connects to new company policy. You can show also that the student or the applicant connects experience to company's needs, their own experience. You can also show that the student, this examples of related experience showing interest and enthusiasm, okay, and student lists skills relevant to that experience. All right, but as with most cover letters, the student discusses things can be improved. The student discusses company at the expense of skills and experience, and the student should be more specific with how the experience was carried out at the law firm, or how their own experience fits the experience, or fits what the hiring manager needs. Okay. So you have one or two body paragraphs doing this sort of stuff. So you might choose to break those. I'm sorry, I went ahead. You might choose to break those body paragraphs up into two by different needs of the company. Okay, so how you would fit those needs of the company, or you might break those paragraphs up according to what the job advertisement says. Okay, so what kind of person they're looking for. Okay, remember, you're trying to show with this letter how you fit that job, not how that job fits you, but how you fit that job. So you want to think about this in terms of what the hiring manager needs, or what the hiring manager has said they need in the job advertisement. Okay, and this is why the job advertisement can be a useful resource when you're researching a company. Okay. So the last thing that you're going to do is you're going to put together a concluding paragraph. And the introductory paragraph is usually more important than any other paragraph in the letter, but the concluding paragraph is also important, and you don't want to just kind of write it off as a way of saying goodbye. Okay? What you might do in a memo or in an email, you might just like, Thanks for listening. Let me know how I can help. If you notice that I do that a lot in my emails as a way to conclude, because I've gotten what I want across and I'm moving on, okay? But in a cover letter, you want to be a little bit more specific. And so what you're trying to do in a cover letter is thank the employer for his or her consideration. And why do you do that? Because it's a way to build a relationship. And it might seem like it's super formal and doesn't really matter, but if it's not there, then it makes the tone of your cover letter seem a little bit too calculating, if that makes sense, and that you don't want to build a relationship. This is a formal step, but it's one that helps you create a connection with the hiring manager. So you're going to do that, and then you're going to emphasize your major qualifications or why you are perfect for this job, okay? And then, or internship, and then you're going to ask for an interview, right? Why? Because the cover letter is there, and the resume is there to help you get an interview. You want that interview. You don't care about the job, because if you go straight for the job, you're skipping a step. You want that interview so that you can go in there and make a connection and really show why you are great for the job. Why? Because the interview allows you to go on and on, right? If you try to skip the interview, then you're showing that maybe you can't make it through that interview, right? And it's a stupid thing again, but it's part of the conventions of the genre. This is what we do when we write cover letters, okay? You ask for something in specific, right? So you might ask for an interview. You might ask for the employee to contact you, okay? You might say that you will contact them. Why would you contact the employer? To make sure that they got everything and that they didn't have any extra questions. And so you want to put kind of a timetable on this. You want to make sure it's very specific, this action statement. You're going to ask for an interview within the next month, or you're going to contact him in the next month to make sure that there's nothing else that you can do. It's a way of showing that you're proactive. You're already sending in the application, so that's already showing that you're proactive about this job. But if you show that you are going to do something later, or you're going to look for something later, as far as look for an interview request or look for further questions, then you are being even more proactive than someone else that might not include this part. It's also showing that you're interested in the job, right? Why? Because that's part of the cover letter. You're trying to show that you are good for the job and that you're interested in the job. Because if you're trying to hire someone, if you put yourself in the hiring manager's point of view or perspective, then they are looking for someone that's good for the job, but there might be like 15 people good for the job. And they're looking for someone that's interested in the job and knows about the company and is ready to start and do a good job from day one, right? So you want to show from the cover letter, from your first document, that you are ready for that, right? Now, this action statement might feel forced, and I know that when I'm writing a letter, I don't want to do this sort of thing, because it's just kind of, if you're trying to show that you're good for a job, you don't want to be too forceful about it, because there's something about being forceful that can turn people off. You might want to consider that when you're writing your cover letter. But if you don't do this, then you're being too passive. All right? This is a market. This is part of a negotiation that you start with the company from the first moment, and you want to show that you are actively engaged in this negotiation for a job, because they're negotiating with like 20 people, and you want to make sure that you're among the 5 or so that they bring in for an interview. Right? So being proactive about that interview and being proactive about contacting the manager, even if you don't exactly follow through with it, you're still showing that you're interested in the job. Okay? So you want to include that in there. All right? And since we're at the end, and I didn't really talk about this much, you do want to sign off. And when you sign off, just to go back, when you sign off, you want to make sure that you're using this respectfully. So you want to say sincerely. That's just the generic one. But you don't want to sign off in an unprofessional tone, just like with an email. You want to sign off sincerely, not love, not with all care. Okay, I might say take care to you guys, but we have a little bit more of a close relationship because it's student-teacher. It's not complete stranger hiring manager. So you want to make sure you're using a sign off, a salutation that's a little bit more formal, and you want to show that what's included in the bottom. You might say it in the introductory paragraph, but you also want to put it down here just to remind them to turn the page. And they're going to turn the page anyways, but you want to remind them to go on, that this is what's included. All right. The reason you show this is because some jobs will ask for a writing sample if it's a promotions or marketing position. Some jobs will ask for proof of degree or proof of certification, and you might want to include that as well, so you have that enclosure to show what kind of documents are included, even if it's just the resume. Okay, and like I always say, if you have questions, please let me know. Okay, give me a second to get back to the slide I was at. Just a second. When you're doing this, I just want to reiterate some of these style considerations and some of these design considerations. It's not as important as it is with the resume, because the resume is such a specific document that you're wanting to use action words, or you want to use this sort of stuff and this sort of stuff, and you're going to want to format it in a very specific way. With the cover letter, you don't need to pay as much attention because you're kind of including that sort of these design elements in the paragraphs by making it very specific about that one job. But you do want to make sure that it's presented in a very respectful tone and professional tone, and that the design does not have any red flags, because even though presentation is everything, it matters even more on the cover letter. Okay, because if it doesn't look like a cover letter, it's going to be very suspicious. Right? Not necessarily in a bad way, but in a way that I don't necessarily want to figure this out. Because you want to remember that these documents are read very quickly if the job is very desirable. And if the job isn't very desirable, they're still read very quickly because you're trying to get to the people that actually want the job. Okay, so when you're putting together a cover letter, you want to make sure that your writing is precise, very specific details, very concrete stuff. You want it to make sure that your cover letter is one page. All right, with the concrete details, you want to use specific individual, write to a specific company. Use those details that you know about that company in the cover letter, because it makes it seem like even if you don't want it, that you are writing this mainly for this one job, and this is the only job you care about. All right? Because even if it's not true, you want them to think it's true. Because again, that you attitude, they're looking for someone that wants that job. You want to look like you want that job. All right? You want to make sure your experience and qualifications are tangible with specific detail. Okay? You want to be choosy about what to include in this, just like with the resume. You want to be choosy about what you talk about in greater detail in your body paragraphs. Right? You want to interpret your resume, include details that do not fit on the resume. You want to show what's on there. You don't just want to repeat what's on there. Okay? Remember, these are working together, the resume and the cover letter. So you don't want to just repeat what's on the resume. You want to draw the hiring manager's attention to what's on the resume by going into more detail. All right, and I've already said this over and over again. You want to focus on the you attitude. All right, and then the last thing I want to say is that the whole idea of the design matters with the cover letter as much as it matters with the resume. Because if we look at the quadrants, all this information, the contact information, the stuff that's specific about the job, the salutation, the opening line of each paragraph is in this first is in this first quadrant. And the conclusion is in the second quadrant, or in the third quadrant if we look at it this way. All right, but it's still designed with an idea towards white space. There's a lot more white space here than there is on a resume, but it's a way to draw attention to the body paragraphs where you're trying to make your case, but also to the other paragraphs where you are filling the conventions and showing that you know what you're doing. All right. Now, if you have any questions, please let me know. Send me an email. I'm more than happy to respond. I know some people are sending me stuff on Canvas through Messenger, through the message app on Canvas. I would recommend that you send me emails because I don't check the Canvas stuff that often. It's just not part of my routine. So if you want a quick response, please send me messages through email at drewhevern2. Or you can stop by my office hours, and I'm happy to talk with you there. If you want to arrange a physical meeting to talk with me in person, I'm more than happy about that. Again, just send me an email. All right. You have your professional exploration presentation due soon. And again, if you have questions about that, please let me know. Take care, and I will talk to you guys in the near future. Bye.